Ladies and gentlemen, today let us explore a truth that many have hesitated to embrace: the idea that kindness, while noble, must be balanced with self-respect and boundaries. This message is particularly resonant when we talk about our relationships with men, whether as friends, partners, or colleagues. Let's begin by challenging a myth. Being nice is often misunderstood. Niceness without boundaries can quickly become a form of self-betrayal. It's time to redefine how we interact and make space for the kind of respect that comes not from submission, but from standing firmly in our authenticity. Let's define boundaries for respect. Imagine a garden. If you don't build a fence to protect what grows within, anyone can trample it without care. Your life is that garden, and boundaries are the fence. Without boundaries, we invite behavior that disrespects our time, energy, and worth. Being nice is not about allowing others to dictate the terms of your worth. It's about valuing yourself enough to say, this is where I end, and you begin. When you set boundaries, you're not pushing people away, you're teaching them how to respect you. And in that process, you create space for the right people to step into your life with understanding and mutual regard. Lead with authenticity. Authenticity is a rare and beautiful gift in this world. Too often we wear the mask of niceness, hoping to be loved or accepted, but that mask can suffocate us, leaving us disconnected from who we truly are. When you lead with authenticity, you're saying, this is me. Fully and unapologetically, authenticity invites respect. It commands a room not with aggression, but with a quiet confidence that says, I know who I am and I don't need to pretend for your approval. Prioritize self-respect. Being nice is often conflated with self-sacrifice, but true kindness starts with being kind to yourself. When you prioritize self-respect, you send a powerful message: I am worthy of love, respect, and dignity, not because of what I do for you, but because of what I do for you, but because of who I am. Think of the times you've overextended yourself in the name of niceness. How often did it leave you feeling depleted, unappreciated, or even resentful? Prioritizing self-respect means understanding that your needs matter. When you respect yourself, others will follow suit. Communicate expectations clearly. Niceness without clarity is confusing. When you are honest and direct about your expectations, you remove the guesswork and establish a foundation for trust. Clarity is kindness. Being nice doesn't mean avoiding conflict or sugarcoating your needs. It means addressing issues with empathy and firmness. Communicating clearly doesn't make you difficult, it makes you real. And real is what we all crave in a world full of pretenses. But embrace vulnerability with courage. Let's talk about vulnerability. Too often we mistake vulnerability for weakness, but it's the exact opposite. Vulnerability is strength wrapped in honesty. It's the courage to say, this is what I need. This is how I feel. When you approach relationships with vulnerability, you open the door to connection, but it must be balanced with boundaries. Vulnerability without self-respect can lead to exploitation, but vulnerability coupled with courage can transform how people see and treat you. Let this be the moment you reclaim the narrative. Stop being nice at the expense of yourself. Instead, set boundaries that protect your peace. Be authentic in a way that commands respect. Prioritize your self-worth unapologetically. Speak your truth with clarity and honor your vulnerability with courage. The world doesn't need you to be endlessly nice, it needs you to be authentically, powerfully you. In doing so, you teach others, especially the men in your life, to respect, cherish, and celebrate your strength. Imagine standing in a beautiful garden, the flowers blooming in every direction, the trees reaching high toward the sky. But there's a problem. There's no fence, no boundary to protect the garden from the world outside. Without protection, the flowers are trampled, the plants are damaged, and the beauty within is lost. Now imagine that garden is your life. Your thoughts, your energy, your dreams are the flowers, and without boundaries, they can be trampled, ignored, or even taken for granted. Boundaries are not barriers meant to isolate you from others. They are the fences that protect your life's most precious elements. We often think of kindness and niceness as virtues, which they absolutely are, but what's often overlooked is the subtle, insidious way that niceness can become a tool for self-sacrifice. When we overextend ourselves for others, when we allow our own needs and desires to be sidelined, we send the message that our worth comes from what we can do for others. This is not kindness, it's the quiet erosion of our self-respect. You deserve more than that. You deserve the space to protect your peace, to guard your time, and to cultivate your energy without fear of it being depleted by those who take and never give. Setting boundaries is an act of courage. It requires us to be bold enough to declare that we are worthy of being treated with respect and that we will no longer allow ourselves to be a doormat for others to walk on. It's not about being harsh or unkind, it's about recognizing that you are not responsible for the emotional, mental, or physical well-being of others at the cost of your own. When you say no to something that drains you, you are saying yes to yourself. When you establish clear lines between what is acceptable and what is not, you are not shutting people out, you're inviting in only those who will respect and honor your boundaries. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that by being nice, we'll earn the love or approval we seek. We believe that if we just do enough, give enough, or sacrifice enough, people will finally see our worth. But here's the truth, your worth is not defined by what you do for others. It is inherent, it is in your being, not your pleasing. By setting boundaries, you affirm that you are worthy of respect regardless of what you give or do. And when you show others that you value yourself, they have no choice but to treat you with the same respect you offer yourself. Boundaries are the silent declaration that you are enough, just as you are. Think about the times when you felt resentment creeping in. Perhaps someone has asked for your time, your energy, your help, and you've said yes, even though deep down you felt exhausted, overwhelmed, or even unappreciated. In those moments, you were betraying yourself. When you don't set clear boundaries, you're allowing others to define how much of you is available, how much of you is worthy, and how much of you is expendable. But when you stand in your truth and establish boundaries, you take back the power, you take back the authority over your life and the right to decide where your time and energy go. It's not always easy. People may not understand or even appreciate the boundaries you put in place. Some might try to push against them, to test them, or to guilt you into giving more than you should. But that's where your strength lies. You are not responsible for the feelings of others when you set boundaries. The fear of disappointing someone is natural, but it's not a reason to abandon your own well-being. If someone truly values you, they will respect your boundaries. If they don't, that is their choice, but it does not diminish your worth. In the end, boundaries are not walls that keep others out. They are the lines that define where you begin and end, where you stand in your truth. They ensure that you protect your inner garden, allowing it to grow, flourish, and thrive. By setting boundaries, you create a life that is yours to live, full of respect, authenticity, and the power to say, I am enough, and that is the most beautiful gift you can give yourself. Authenticity is a rare and precious commodity in a world where so many of us are conditioned to wear masks. We live in a society that celebrates conformity, where the pressure to fit in, to be liked, and to adhere to societal norms often feels overwhelming. We spend so much of our time trying to live up to others' expectations or molding ourselves into versions that we think will be more acceptable. But here's the truth, the world doesn't need more of what everyone else is already doing. The world needs you genuine, unfiltered, unapologetic you. When you lead with authenticity, you stop hiding behind a facade. You stop contorting yourself into a shape that feels unnatural, all in the hopes that it will earn you approval or acceptance. Instead, you embrace who you are, flaws and all, and show up in a way that is true to your heart. Authenticity is not about perfection. It's not about having it all figured out. It's about being real with yourself and with others, embracing your uniqueness, and showing the world that you are worthy of love and respect just as you are. But leading with authenticity isn't always easy. It takes courage to stand in your truth when everyone around you seems to be playing by different rules. It requires vulnerability to open yourself up and say, this is me, and I'm not going to apologize for it. It means letting go of the fear of judgment and criticism and instead choosing to live in alignment with your values, passions, and purpose. When you lead with authenticity, you're not seeking approval from others, you're seeking approval from the one person who matters the most, yourself. Think about the times when you felt most alive, most in tune with yourself. Chances are those moments came when you were being completely true to who you are. Maybe it was when you were having an honest conversation with a friend, or when you took a leap of faith and pursued something that made your heart race. In those moments, there was no pretending, no holding back. You were fully present, fully you. And that's when the magic happens. When you show up authentically, you give others the permission to do the same. You create an environment where vulnerability is met with compassion and where true connections are built on the foundation of honesty. Leading with authenticity also means embracing your imperfections. We live in a culture that often tells us we need to be flawless to be accepted, but this ideal of perfection is an illusion. It's the imperfections that make us human, that make us relatable, that make us real. When you allow yourself to be imperfect, you give others the space to be imperfect too. You remove the pressure to be someone you're not, and instead you allow yourself to grow and evolve on your own terms. It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to be who others want us to be. We all want to be loved, valued, and accepted, but the greatest love you can give yourself is the love that comes from living in alignment with your true self. When you lead with authenticity, you are not dependent on external validation. Self-respect is the cornerstone of a life lived with integrity and purpose. It is the quiet strength that anchors you, even in the stormiest of times. Too often, we think of respect as something that must be earned from others, something we have to prove or give away to be valued. But the truth is, the most important respect you can cultivate is the respect you have for yourself. When you honor who you are, your boundaries, your time, and your values, you set the standard for how others should treat you. It is not a luxury or an afterthought, it is the foundation upon which every healthy relationship, every successful endeavor, and every meaningful moment in your life is built. Prioritizing self-respect means understanding that your worth is inherent. It does not depend on the approval of others or how much you can do for those around you. Your value is not determined by your capacity to please, to accommodate, or to sacrifice yourself for the sake of others' comfort. True respect for yourself comes from within. It begins with the recognition that you are enough, just as you are, without needing to justify your existence or diminish your needs in order to gain someone's approval. When you start to respect yourself, you stop apologizing for taking up space, for speaking your truth, for standing firm in your beliefs, and for saying no when you need to. You begin to understand that saying no is not a rejection of others, but a declaration that your well-being and your peace are non-negotiable. The world often tells us that in order to be loved or valued, we must give endlessly, sometimes to the detriment of our own needs. We are conditioned to believe that sacrifice is noble, that putting others first is a sign of strength. But what happens when you give so much that you have nothing left for yourself? What happens when your own needs are constantly pushed aside in favor of someone else's desires? In those moments, you lose yourself. You lose sight of your worth, and you begin to feel depleted, resentful, and invisible. When you prioritize self-respect, you set a clear boundary with yourself that says, I am worthy of love, time, and care, not because I'm constantly giving to others, but because I am enough as I am. It's not always easy, especially when you spent a lifetime putting others' needs ahead of your own. We fear that if we stop giving, we will be seen as selfish, uncaring, or unloving. But the reality is that true self-respect is not about selfishness, it's about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. When you respect yourself, you understand that self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You learn that by taking time for yourself, by filling your own cup, you become better equipped to show up for others in a way that is healthy, balanced, and sustainable. You begin to realize that your happiness and well-being are not dependent on anyone else, they are yours to cultivate. Prioritizing self-respect also means embracing your worth, even when others may not see it. There will always be people who try to diminish you, to make you feel small, or to impose their expectations onto your life. But when you Clear communication is the key to healthy, successful relationships, whether personal or professional. It's about making sure that what you need, expect, and value is understood by those around you. So often we assume that others know what we want or need without expressing it directly. We expect them to read between the lines, but the reality is people cannot read our minds. When we don't communicate our expectations clearly, we leave room for misunderstandings, frustration, and resentment. By being direct and honest about our needs, we pave the way for better understanding and deeper connection. When you communicate expectations clearly, you give others the opportunity to show up for you in the way you need them to. You take the guesswork out of relationships and remove the potential for unmet needs. This doesn't mean dictating or controlling every aspect of how others behave. It means articulating your desires, boundaries, and goals in a way that invites collaboration and mutual respect. When people know exactly what you need and expect, they can align their actions to support your vision, rather than unintentionally falling short of your hopes. Too often, we hesitate to set clear expectations because we fear disappointing others or creating conflict. But the truth is, not setting boundaries and expectations only leads to more disappointment in the long run. People can't meet your needs if they don't know what they are. Being clear is not about being rigid or inflexible. It's about being honest and proactive in setting the foundation for a healthy dynamic. When you communicate your expectations, you create a space where others can honor and respect you, and where you, in turn, can honor and respect them. Setting clear expectations also strengthens your sense of self. When you know what you want and can express it confidently, you are affirming your own worth. You are saying that your needs matter and that they are worthy of being heard. By communicating openly, you demonstrate that you value yourself enough to ensure that others understand how to treat you. This is not about perfection or being right all the time, but about creating a space where both your voice and the voices of others can be heard and respected. Ultimately, clear communication is about connection. It is the bridge between your inner world and the outer world. When you express your needs, desires, and boundaries with clarity, you invite others into a meaningful dialogue that fosters respect, understanding, and mutual growth. It's not just about what you say, it's about creating a space where both you and others can feel valued, heard, and supported. Clear communication unlocks the potential for deeper, more fulfilling relationships, and it starts with being brave enough to speak up. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, a crack in the armor that exposes our raw, unguarded selves to the world. Yet true strength lies in the ability to be vulnerable, to open ourselves up to the possibility of rejection, failure, and pain, with the courage to face it head-on. It takes immense bravery to allow ourselves to be seen as we are, without the protective shield of perfection, without the masks we wear to shield our hearts. But vulnerability is not a sign of fragility. It is, in fact, a powerful act of courage, because it means we are willing to show up as our true selves despite the uncertainty of how others might respond. To embrace vulnerability is to give yourself permission to be human, to acknowledge that at times you will stumble, fall, and make mistakes. And yet, in those moments of imperfection, there is beauty and authenticity. When we embrace vulnerability, we let go of the need for approval or validation. We begin to accept that our worth is not tied to our successes, our accomplishments, or the external image we project. Instead, we understand that our true value lies in the way we show up, imperfect as we may be. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we step into our power, because we no longer feel the need to hide or cover up our flaws. We stand fully in the truth of who we are, and in doing so, we give others permission to do the same. It is through vulnerability that we form deep connections with others. We all crave authenticity. We all long to know and be known by others in a way that is real and unfiltered. When we choose to show our true selves, our hopes, our fears, our dreams, our wounds, we invite others to meet us there, in that space of truth and openness. It is in these moments of raw connection that real relationships are formed. It is in the willingness to be vulnerable that we create a foundation of trust, compassion, and empathy. And the beautiful thing about vulnerability is that it is contagious when you embrace your own. Embracing vulnerability with courage is not an easy path, but it is one that leads to the truest forms of connection, growth, and fulfillment. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we strip away the facades and the armor, revealing the strength that lies in our authenticity. It is in those moments of vulnerability that we truly find our power, not in perfection, but in the raw, unfiltered truth of who we are. So let us embrace vulnerability not as a weakness, but as the ultimate expression of strength. Let us be brave enough to show up fully, without fear of judgment, and trust that in doing so, we will not only find ourselves, but also create the space for others to do the same. The world needs your authenticity, your truth, and your courage. The moment you choose to embrace vulnerability is the moment you begin to live a life of limitless connection, compassion, and freedom.